What if I told you that one of the most iconic films of all time almost never existed? That Back to the Future, the movie we all know and love, was on the brink of disaster at nearly every turn. The story behind its creation is wilder than any time travel plot. A script rejected over 40 times, a nuclear explosion intended to power the time machine, and a lead actor fired after weeks of filming. And that's just the beginning. But through all the chaos, one thing remained clear. Director Robert Zemeckis wasn't going to let it fail. And in the end, not only did Back to the Future succeed, it skyrocketed Zemeckis to stardom, launching a career that would give us classics like Forrest Gump, Castaway, and The Polar Express. This is the untold story of how a production full of obstacles turned into a cinematic breakthrough, and how it made Robert Zemeckis one of the most successful filmmakers of his generation. What would happen if you could go back in time and meet your teenage parents? Would you get along? Or would it lead to chaos you never saw coming? That was the exact question Bob Gale asked himself after discovering his dad's high school yearbook. Little did he know, this spark of curiosity would set off a chain reaction that would lead to wild creative debates, send Disney executives running, and ultimately create one of the most beloved films of all time. But getting there? Oh, it was a mess. Gale, a young screenwriter with a knack for inventive storytelling, was already collaborating with Robert Zemeckis, a rising director who shared his passion for pushing boundaries. The two had teamed up on a few projects, including Used Cars in 1941, but neither had achieved the success they craved. Despite their struggles, their partnership thrived on a shared love of pop culture, sharp humor, and willingness to take risks. When Gale had the idea for Back to the Future, it quickly evolved into a screenplay that blended heartfelt family dynamics with sci-fi adventure. One person who recognized the potential early was Steven Spielberg. Despite the box office failure of 1941, he remained a mentor to Zemeckis and expressed interest in producing Back to the Future through his Amblin Entertainment banner. But Spielberg's involvement came with baggage. The studios worried his attachment would overshadow the project and turn it to another, Spielberg movie. Gale and Zemeckis decided to shop the script elsewhere, hoping to gain traction on their own terms. But Hollywood wasn't biting. The script was deemed too clean compared to the raunchy comedies dominating the box office like Animal House. Determined to make it work, Gale and Zemeckis added edgier elements, including the now infamous subplot where Marty accidentally kisses his teenage mom. The changes didn't help. Disney rejected it outright, calling the premise too scandalous for a family film. The duo faced dozens of rejections, their dream project seemingly stuck in limbo. Zemeckis, sensing he needed a win to gain credibility, stepped away to direct Romancing the Stone. The gamble paid off, as the film became a breakout hit, turning Zemeckis into a sought-after director. With his newfound clout, Zemeckis felt ready to revisit Back to the Future and approach Spielberg once more, confident in their ability to push the project forward. What had once been an uphill battle was finally taking shape. Gale and Zemeckis honed a story that perfectly balanced heart, humor, and high-stakes adventure. This time, with Spielberg's backing, Universal Pictures took a chance, greenlighting the project with a $19 million budget, a significant investment, though modest compared to Spielberg's recent hits. Still, it wasn't smooth sailing. Studio politics nearly derailed the project. Universal executives, wary of Spielberg's influence, feared that his involvement would take over and overshadow the unique vision Gale and Zemeckis had for it. Tensions were further fueled by Frank Price, the new head of Universal, who had little patience for Spielberg's outsized role in the project. Fresh from Columbia Pictures, Price had taken a hard stance on the script, pushing hard for the early revisions. But his involvement wasn't just about refining the script. He clashed with Spielberg and sought more control over the direction of the film, creating a rift that complicated its progress. Legal complication added to the chaos. After requesting revision to an earlier version of the script, Columbia Pictures still retained the rights to Back to the Future. When Price transitioned to Universal Pictures, he wanted to take the project with him, but Columbia's ownership of the rights stood in the way. At the same time, Guy McElwain, Price's successor at Columbia Pictures, had been negotiating over Big Trouble in Little China. The film's script had closely mirrored Double Indemnity, the Universal Pictures property, raising concerns of a potential copyright dispute. To resolve the issue, Universal and Columbia negotiated a trade. Universal cleared the legal path for Big Trouble in Little China, and Columbia transferred the rights to Back to the Future to Universal. This exchange brought the project into Universal's hands, but caused additional delays as the legal red tape was sorted out. As production moved forward, the team faced plenty of creative challenges. Ford famously suggested swapping the DeLorean for a Mustang, but Gale and Zemeckis stood firm, believing the quirky, futuristic car was integral to the story's charm. Interestingly, the DeLorean itself wasn't always part of the plan. In the earliest drafts, the time machine was a repurposed refrigerator. Concerns over budget and safety, imagine kids climbing into refrigerators at home, prompted the switch to the sleek, gull-winged vehicle that has since become synonymous with time travel. But even after settling on the DeLorean, crafting the perfect climax proved tricky. The original idea of Marty driving into a nuclear explosion was ultimately scrapped for being prohibitively expensive and overly complicated. The lightning strike at the clock tower was a last-minute solution born out of necessity, but it's hard to imagine the film without it. This change not only streamlined the story, but also created one of the most iconic sequences in cinema history. The green light was a turning point, but it came with its own set of expectations. Universal needed a blockbuster, Spielberg's reputation was on the line, and the filmmakers had to prove they could deliver. As production kicked off, the real challenges began. From casting shakeups to a method-acting disaster, the chaotic journey of Back to the Future was only getting started. With the project finally greenlit, it was time to assemble the cast and crew. But if you thought pre-production was chaotic, you haven't seen anything yet. Casting Marty McFly proved to be a saga all on its own. Michael J. Fox was actually the first choice for the role, but scheduling conflicts with the ongoing sitcom Family Ties made him unavailable. This is where Eric Stoltz came in, a rising star known for his serious method acting approach. He got the part and dove headfirst into the role, perhaps a little too headfirst. Stoltz insisted on staying in character as Marty at all times, even off camera. He reportedly refused to answer to his own name and delivered scenes with a level of intensity that left the crew scratching their heads. Marty McFly was supposed to be lighthearted and full of charm. Qualities Stoltz's performance sorely lacked. It didn't take long for whispers to start on set. Was Stoltz the wrong choice? After 6 weeks of filming, yes, 6 weeks, Robert Zemeckis made the gut-wrenching decision to fire Stoltz. Spielberg supported the call, but the studio wasn't thrilled about starting over, especially with millions of dollars already spent. Luckily, Michael J. Fox's schedule had opened up just enough to squeeze in the shoot. The solution? Fox worked on Family Ties by day and shot Back to the Future by night, catching only a few hours of sleep as drivers ferried him from set to set. But the casting drama wasn't the only hiccup during production. The DeLorean, while iconic, was a logistical nightmare. The car constantly broke down and its gull-wing doors refused to stay open. Crew members had to rig them up with fishing lines just to get the shots. Even the famous Johnny B. Good performance wasn't without its challenges. Michael J. Fox learned to fake playing the guitar for the scene, and his performance was so convincing that the production team insisted it was him performing. To maintain the illusion and immersion, they went as far as refusing to admit that Fox was lip-syncing to a pre-recorded track. This dedication to authenticity elevated the scene, making it one of the film's most iconic moments. But it wasn't the only obstacle the Johnny B. Good scene presented. More on that later. Meanwhile, the film's cast was coming together. Christopher Lloyd, best known at the time for his role in Taxi, was hesitant to take on Doc Brown, but he eventually agreed after being convinced by his wife to give the script another chance. Lloyd's eccentric, wide-eyed take on the time-traveling inventor brought Doc to life, and created instant chemistry with Michael J. Fox, whose humor and energy gave the film the spark it desperately needed. Despite the chaos, the production was starting to gel, but there was still plenty of madness ahead, including the tape. Yes, that tape. When Marty blasts Van Halen to scare George McFly, the music wasn't actually licensed from the band. Eddie Van Halen recorded an impromptu riff for the scene himself as a favor, adding a little extra rock and roll chaos to the movie's already bonkers story. By now the production had fully embraced its madness, but the journey was far from over. With production finally wrapped up, you'd think the hard part was over. But Back to the Future was not done with the chaos. Post-production became a race against time, which is kind of fitting. The team faced as many last-minute challenges as they did on set. With the release date fast approaching, post-production became a race against time. The team was still finalizing effects and polishing the soundtrack with just a few weeks before the film hit theaters. In the midst of all this chaos, the film was screened early for theater owners and studio executives, before it was truly finished. With rough cuts, temporary music, and incomplete special effects, there was real concern over how it would be received. But to the crew's relief, the reaction was overwhelmingly positive, proving that even in its unfinished state, Back to the Future had something special. However, securing the rights to Johnny B. Good proved to be another major hurdle. Chuck Berry's team initially withheld approval for the song, leaving the production team scrambling to secure the rights at the last possible moment. The team had to proceed with the risk, hoping everything would fall into place in time for the release. But despite the uncertainty, the gamble paid off, and the iconic track became one of the film's most memorable moments. As the team continued racing to meet deadlines, one of the most unexpected challenges came from Universal itself. Studio head Sid Sheinberg wasn't sold on the title, and pushed for a last-minute change. He insisted Back to the Future wouldn't work, and suggested Spaceman from Pluto instead. His reasoning? He believed movies with future in the title never succeeded. Instead of arguing, Steven Spielberg cleverly shut down the idea, sending Sheinberg a thank you note pretending the suggestion was a joke. The bluff worked, and the now iconic title stayed intact. But the final hurdle? The special effects. Without modern CGI, every effect was created with practical techniques, from the glowing flux capacitor to the trail of fire left by the DeLorean. The lightning strike at the clock tower, which is arguably the film's most dramatic moment, required painstaking coordination, miniature work, and post-production magic. It's a testament to the crew's dedication that the finished product looks as seamless as it does. And then of course there were some scenes that didn't make it to the final cut. A bizarre moment with Doc Brown in a Playboy magazine didn't quite fit with his character and was cut for pacing. Similarly, a sequence featuring Marty catching Lorraine cheating on a test was scrapped as well. When the dust finally settled and Back to the Future was ready to premiere, no one could have predicted what happened next. What began as a quirky, problem-filled production exploded onto the scene, becoming a critical and commercial juggernaut. Critics praised its inventive storytelling, sharp humor, and unforgettable performances, with Roger Ebert calling it one of the most ingenious, enjoyable, and exciting movies of the year. Audiences flocked to theaters, propelling the film to a massive $388 million worldwide box office haul, making it the highest-grossing movie of the year. The cultural impact was immediate and undeniable. Iconic quotes like and
"Where we're going, we don't need roads"
became instantly recognizable catchphrases. The DeLorean itself transformed into a pop culture symbol, immortalized as the ultimate time travel machine. Fans embraced Marty McFly's style, mimicking his red puffer vest and skateboarding tricks, while the film's innovative blend of sci-fi, comedy, and heart resonated across generations. For Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale, Back to the Future was more than just a hit. It was a career-defining moment. Zemeckis became one of Hollywood's most sought-after directors, going on to create iconic films like Who Framed Roger Rabbit and Forrest Gump. Gale cemented his reputation as a master storyteller, becoming a frequent collaborator with Zemeckis and a mentor to aspiring screenwriters. The film's influence extended beyond the careers it launched. Its use of overlapping timelines, clever foreshadowing, and tightly woven plot threads inspired a new wave of storytelling. Modern blockbusters from Avengers Endgame to Stranger Things owe a debt to Back to the Future's innovative narrative structure and its ability to balance spectacle with emotional depth. The overwhelming success of the first film naturally led to two sequels, Back to the Future Part 2 in 1989 and Back to the Future Part 3 in 1990. Both films had their own production quirks, from the ambitious vision of a dystopian future in Part 2 to the playful Western setting of Part 3. Filmed back-to-back to streamline production, the sequels expanded the universe while continuing the heart and humor of the original. Beyond the trilogy, Back to the Future evolved into a cultural phenomenon. It spawned an animated series, a beloved theme park ride, and even a Broadway musical, keeping the spirit of the franchise alive for decades. The film's legacy is evident in countless parodies, homages, and references in everything from The Simpsons to modern memes. It wasn't just a movie. It became a cornerstone of modern cinema and an enduring touchstone for pop culture.